Black Doctors podcast highlights the stories of minority professionals with the goal of inspiring others. Season 2 provides more episodes and features a wider variety of professions. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and share with others, because the next generation can't be what they don't see. Tune in every Monday to hear our stories told by us.
Hey, it's Steven, your host for Black Doctors Podcast. Coming to you this week, the special Veterans Day edition of the show. We're commemorating Veterans Day. Originally, it was known as Armistice Day, and it was designated to celebrate veterans of World War I who served their country. And now we use this day to recognize folks that have sacrificed a great amount for our country who are still living among us. So today we have Dr. Antonio Webb. He is an orthopedic spine surgeon. He currently practices at the South Texas Spine Clinic in San Antonio, Texas, but originally he's a native of Shreveport, Louisiana. In addition to being a surgeon, he is an author, YouTube sensation, and motivational speaker. You should check out his book, Overcoming the Odds. Dr. Webb, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Let's get into it, man. I did order a copy of your book so I could study up before we got on the phone.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So when you first decided to go into the Air Force, you had this family history of service in the military. At that time, you knew you wanted to go into the medical field, but you delayed that to join the service. Can you tell us more about that decision you made?
Yeah. So my father was in the Air Force and retired. He spent some time in the Army as well. And then my older brother, he's active duty Army still. He's been in for about 22 years. So I came from a family history of being in the military, and I kind of wanted to follow that same kind of path and also have a way to pay for school and gain some experience before going off to medical school. So I joined the Air Force at age 17 and did 8 years in the military and got out and went to med school afterwards.
Yeah, and when you joined the service, was that before or after 9/11 had occurred?
This was before. So I joined in January of 2001. And as you guys know, September 11th, 2001 was, kind of a couple months before, actually.
And so as a consequence, obviously there's a lot of stuff going on in Iraq and Afghanistan, and shortly thereafter, you yourself were deployed. How was that experience?
Yeah, it was a pretty dangerous time. You know, we went there we took over for the Army. They went out and secured an area right outside of Baghdad, and we set up basically our hospital, or kind of deployed kind of hospital, and that's kind of where we worked out of for a few months, taking care of wounded soldiers.
And when you were in country, what was your rank and what was your primary job there?
So I was around 22 years old. I think I was 21 or 22, and my job was a medic. So I took care of soldiers who were injured, took care of the Iraqi insurgents, and essentially just kind of stabilizing patients and soldiers until they got them out of the war zone and got them over to Ramstein, Germany. But I was a staff sergeant at that. No, I was actually, I think I was an E4 or E5. So it's a senior airman or a staff sergeant. I don't recall.
What a lot of people don't realize is that when you're in the military, there's a lot of other jobs that you do. So even though you're a medic, I know reading your book, you were running security and doing some other stuff. So how was that?
Yeah, I mean, the military is, if there's any downtime or there's other things that need to get done, I mean, you have to kind of step up to the plate. So we did perform security. We had security details, basically kind of guarding our compound. Someone had to kind of guard our perimeter, and just like checking everyone who kind of came in kind of close to our area and kind of where we were working. But we did that and kind of other details, transporting patients. Went on a couple runs with the Army while I was there. And a lot of other things besides just my main job as a medic.
From day to day, like what did you think about? Were you thinking about getting back home safe, or like how did you pass the time mentally?
I think just taking it day by day. I did a lot of reading. I was actually taking pre-med courses at that time, so I had to drop a couple of classes or did not take classes that semester. When I was on active duty, I was going to school full time, like in the nighttime or weekends, internet courses. So while I was in Iraq, any downtime that I had, my head was in the book, trying to read, biochemistry or cell bio, and just trying to prepare for the arrival back to the U.S. so I can get back in school. But, a lot of working out and trying to pass by the time as safely and as best as I could.
Yeah, and speaking of safety, because you paint a pretty hairy picture of your living situations over there in Iraq, especially your second day in country. There was a event that was probably hit pretty close to home. You mind telling us about that?
Yeah, so I was deployed to a place called Mortarville. And they called it that because the amount of mortar attacks that we received on a daily basis. It was said that my unit, we survived over 100 of these attacks, and basically these are rocket-propelled grenades, or RPGs is what we call them. And yeah, there was a few instances where they got very close to hitting our compound, and they actually shot one of the grenades, and it went. I heard it go over my head and hit the ground, and right outside of our tent location where we were taking care of patients. But luckily, that RPG didn't go off as a dud, which means the explosive ordnance team had to come in and detonate it. But I'm pretty sure if that would have went off, it would have took out our whole compound, because the only thing really that was separating us from that grenade was actually just the tents, and we had sandbags kind of around the tents, but that probably wasn't going to be much of protection. But yeah, we had a couple close calls like that, and seems like every holiday, or usually in the night times when the insurgents tried to act up or just wanted to start some firefights.
It's a close call, man. A couple of them sounds like. Oh, we're glad you made it through.
Yeah, a number of them. I distinctly remember a few of them where it was so loud. It's probably some of the loudest noises I've ever heard in my life, and it's just you kind of crumble and kind of go into a little frenzy because it's so loud and so disturbing. I've never heard noises that loud until you hear like a bomb go off or a grenade. Those are some really loud noises.
How long were you in theater for?
I was there for about 5 months.
And in that time, you cared for over 800 patients.
Mm-hmm.
You earned numerous awards and achievement medals before rotating back to the States.
Yep.
Once you got back, you were able to proceed with that pathway of getting into medical school. So how was that transition back home and then back into a very heavy academic schedule?
It was a really rough transition. I did have some symptoms and of like PTSD when I got back, and that's one of the things kind of talked about in my book. But just being around loud noises, the 4th of July, even to this day, I have there's firecrackers or kind of loud noises. Those things kind of remind me of things that I saw there. But it was definitely a kind of rough transition getting back. If you imagine being in a type of environment for so many months, and then all of a sudden going back into the real world, or getting back to the States, it's a big adjustment. But I got back and enrolled back into school again and tried to get back on my kind of plan to become a physician and complete my pre-med courses, and still went to school full time. And I had a rough kind of number of years trying to get into medical school. It took me 3 attempts to get in, and every single year I got rejected, but kept applying and eventually got in.
Yeah, and you initially got into a master's program at Georgetown, is that correct?
It was a Postbac program.
And then after finishing that, you started in 2010 at Georgetown?
Yep, 2010.
Which is it's funny because that's kind of where our paths collide. Because I started medical school at Howard in 2010, so we were pretty close.
Yeah, right down the street, not too far away. Surprised I didn't run into you DC streets.
Well, yeah, me too. At what point did you decide that orthopedic surgery was the specialty for you?
I knew since I was like 3 years old I wanted to be orthopedic surgeon. No, I'm just joking. It was my third year of med school. After my rotation in it, I just fell in love with it. I love the collegial kind of atmosphere of it. It's kind of like a a group of people that get along really well, and everybody had great attitudes and work really hard. And I love the procedures, kind of putting things back together and kind of the reconstructive aspect of it. And yeah, it's probably my end of my third year when I kind of solidified my decision to go into it.
Nice. And then you matched down there in Texas. At what point did you write your book, or when did you decide to write a book?
It was probably the end of, kind of towards the end of medical school, intern year, where I kind of just, it took me a while and kind of compiled a whole bunch of things from my past. And I wanted to also give some advice to students or, a young kid that maybe pick up the book and they can just use it as a reference. But it was end of medical school, intern year when it kind of came out.
Yeah. And I will say, since I bought this book so I could read up before talking to you, and I was pretty impressed with, after each chapter, you included just pages of advice on various topics.
Yeah, it's just things that I wish I would have known over the years. And a kid from a similar background as myself, hopefully they don't make those same mistakes. So that's kind of my target audience. But people that are 80 years old that reads it, and people that are 10, 11 years old. So, but that's kind of the impetus behind, putting the advice and what I can kind of lead to the next generation of young kids out there.
And, the little bit that I've gotten to know you over the last couple of months or years, multitask is the word that comes to mind, right? So whether it was back when you were in the service and taking all these courses, or studying while you're in Iraq, or writing books while you're an orthopedic surgery intern, how do you do it all? How do you make it all fit into your schedule?
Well, I think one needs to, you have to make sacrifices. So you have to figure out what's most important for you, and like, what are you looking to, get out of your life. So I make a lot of sacrifices. There's some things that a lot of people do in terms of like maybe going out or drinking or hanging out in certain places. Well, I may not be able to do those things because, I have a lot of other things on my plate. So I think it's also important to kind of plan things out. My days, weeks, months are all planned out, and I know exactly what I need to accomplish kind of prior to the day ending or the week ending. And I just kind of picked that up when I was in the military, just being very disciplined with my studies and kind of my overall kind of different businesses that I currently have.
And then how else did the military kind of help influence and guide you during medical school and residency?
I think it also taught me resilience. That's extremely important when you're a surgeon. Things can go wrong really quickly. You just have to be very resilient. You've just been in Iraq getting shot at, and these missiles kind of going everywhere and taking firefights, or, taking small arm fire. You have to be, you're taking care of patients, soldiers. So when all those things are going on, you can't just curl up in the corner. You got to keep doing your job. So I kind of correlate that and kind of extrapolated that to medicine. When things are going wrong in the operating room, you just have to maintain your composure, because, everyone's looking at you as a surgeon. And if they see that you're freaking out, you're screaming that, oh, the patient's bleeding or some type of complication, everyone else is going to be nervous as well. So I got that from the military, as well as leadership skills. I went in very young when I was 17, so I matured, quickly matured in boot camp and all those other things. So the military actually set me up for success, and it got me to the point where I'm at today.
And, during your training, whether residency or fellowship, what were some of the things you struggled with, direct problems with?
For me, I've never been the best standardized test taker, so struggled with that kind of my whole life. But after the Postbac program that I did, they essentially, when you come into the program, they just break everything down that you have learned thus far and teach you how to study, teach you how to take tests, teach you how to conceptualize, teach you how to present in the hospital, and that's kind of what kind of set me up for success in medical school, is that program, and did really well on the step exams. pass orthopedic surgery boards on the first time, and but I would say it's probably the standardized test taking.
Yeah, I know that it's a struggle for a lot of people. Do you still keep in contact with any of the folks that you served with?
Yeah, a few of them. We kind of keep in touch, and I was stationed in the military here in San Antonio, so I see quite a few of the people that I was in the military with. Actually saw one of my former military medics that we were kind of co-military medics. She sent me a patient of her significant other. So I saw him in office this past week, so that's pretty cool. 15 years ago that, she sent him to see me as a patient. But yeah, I keep up with a few of them.
Yeah, I know the military is good for sending you folks with back problems.
Oh yeah, a lot of people have back problems in the military.
Shifting gears a little bit, along the way, you wrote this book, you got into motivational speaking, you started YouTubing. How long have you been doing the YouTube videos for?
For a couple of years. I started off with a blog in medical school. I wanted something that my family members can kind of follow my progress. And I just basically did it for them, but somehow students kind of found it, and then they started sending me questions, and they were sending me kind of very similar questions. So I thought, it's probably a little bit better if I put this into a video format. And I also realized that there was really no surgeons, doctors out there kind of blogging. And there's still not a lot of them also, even to this day. And YouTube has millions of people and billions of views per month. So I kind of transitioned to kind of a video format and kind of stuck with it over the years.
Yeah, what's been your best video so far? The one where I talked about military pay?
Yeah, that was a good one.
But when you break it down, what do you think has been your best video you put out?
I think people really like to hear my story about the struggles that I went through to kind of get to this point. But that's one of my passions is videography and cinematography. So any video that I put out, especially the ones that take a little bit longer to kind of edit and kind of create, those are kind of my favorite ones. But most of the blogs, I love doing blogs, and they take quite a bit of a time to kind of create. But once you get the finished product, it can really inspire a lot of people and kind of give them some insight into life as a surgeon.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, just seeing the reach and the impact that you've been able to have on hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions of people, really, it's incredible.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we just hit over 25 million kind of total views for the channel.
Jeez.
Recently.
As a prior service member and myself, I'm on active duty. I work with a lot of young enlisted guys, and I'm in there trying to help mentor them, but I've never been enlisted. I don't know what their life is kind of like. I try to relate. But what would you say to the enlisted folks out there that are listening that are thinking about college or a job in the health sciences? What advice would you give to those folks?
I would say take full advantage of what the military has to offer. When I was, pretty sure it's still like this. When I was active duty, it was 100% that they would take care of your tuition, all of your books and fees. And then we even had professors in different schools that would come to the base in the evening time just to teach us. So I took a lot of classes like on base. Right after I got off of my shift, I would go over to the education center where there was a school and professor that would teach us certain topics. So just take advantage of that time, and everything else that the military kind of offers, make sure that you take advantage of those things as well, including all the educational benefits. You don't want to kind of go through 4 to 6 years of being in the military and then get out and then try to go to school. You want to take advantage of those things while you're in. It's possible. It's challenging. You have to make some sacrifices, but it's definitely worth it in the end.
Fantastic advice from somebody who's actually lived it. So I'm sure they'll appreciate that. Yeah. So Dr. Webb, again, thank you so much for coming on. Again, happy to honor you and to feature you for this Veterans Day what would you tell our folks, how they can get a hold of you? I gave you a little bio in the beginning. I know I left some stuff out. What do you want to make sure folks know about you?
I can be found at Antonio Webb MD. That's kind of all my social media sites, and anything else in terms of my story or kind of what my plans are for the future, including I have a documentary/movie called Overcoming the Odds movie coming out here probably early 2021, and really looking forward to getting that out and kind of inspiring kind of young kids from a community like mine.
That's incredible. Can't wait to see that drop. Again, if you haven't already, check out his book, Overcoming the Odds book. It's on Amazon or wherever you read books these days. His YouTube channel, like he said, Antonio Webb MD. He literally has videos for everybody. He has a comprehensive day in the life series where he features all types of different specialties and different careers and breaks those down for folks to listen to watch, and to learn. And I know you're super busy with different motivational speaking engagements and stuff. So folks just keep an eye out for you. Check out his website, and you can see where he'll be popping up.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Bradley, and keep up the good work with the podcast. I appreciate you having me on tonight.
The Black Doctors Podcast is a nonprofit, volunteer passion project with the goal of inspiring all who listen. Tune in next week for another episode of the Black Doctors Podcast with Dr. Stephen Bradley, your friendly neighborhood anesthesiologist.